I tend to focus on the big picture shifts in space and structure that can change the way a house flows. But I'm also fascinated by the kind of design that lives in the details, the perfect tile choice, wallpaper selection, or piece of art, a correctly trained drape. So today I'm sharing my recent conversation with someone who knows how to focus on the details that make mid-century homes even more charming. Aletha VanderMaas of True Home Restorations in Grand Haven, Michigan. Not only is she a talented designer, she's also one of the original tastemakers of mid-century Instagram. You may already know her from there, or through her projects featured in Atomic Ranch magazine, and if so, you know you're in for a treat. If not, let me introduce you to someone who has been loving MCM since she started visiting her grandparents in Palm Springs as a child. Hey there, welcome back to Mid-Mod Remodel. This is the show about updating MCM homes, helping you match a mid-century home to your modern life. I'm your host, Della Hansman, architect and mid-century ranch enthusiast, and you're listening to episode 2107. We'll cover the buy a mid-century house to become a mid-century obsessive pipeline. Yeah, Aletha's been on that journey too. And also the best places to look for vintage details and inspiration, and how we can infuse modern ideals and activism with our love for vintage style. You can find links to the resources we mention, a transcript of the whole conversation, plus some stunning photos of some of her recent and favorite projects on the show notes page at midmod-midwest.com/2107. For the design tip of the week, I asked Aletha to share hers, so that'll pop up at the end of the interview. Now, without further ado, let's get right into it. Marvelous. So this is so exciting. I've been really looking forward to this for quite a while. I am so delighted to be talking with Aletha VanderMaas of True Home Restorations. You are based in Michigan, and you have been working in the mid-century field for over a decade now. So I found you when I first fell in love with mid-century and went looking online for community and advice and answers, and thought of you as an expert and a long-time person in the field. I think you'd been deeply into it maybe just a couple more years than I had, but I always am so fascinated. What was your first moment? How did you get into mid-century? Were you always? Was it your house? Was it the chicken or the egg?
So my grandparents have been vacationing in Palm Springs since the 60s. And I would go out there as a little girl. The first time actually was in 1985. And of course, I wasn't admiring homes when I was 4 years old. But the more times I went out, the more I noticed they just live in like an 80s condo. But all the homes across the street from their development are these really weird, long, low ranches with desert landscaping. And I'd walk out and be like, what the heck are these houses? These are so cool and interesting. We don't have those in Michigan. And then then I went back home and I had a 2-story traditional colonial revival house that I grew up in. So it was so different from my own house that I just was interested in it. Again, I had no idea what I was admiring is what I was. And then literally years later in 2012, so many years later, we were looking for a house, and my spouse and I both grew up in 2-story homes, and we were like, we do not want a 2-story house. It was too hot in the summertime upstairs in our bedrooms. Let's find a ranch. And the first ranch we walked through was this interesting ranch. And I was like, why is this house so different? It's so cool. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to describe it, but it felt like a California house. And then of course we kept looking and looking, and I'm like, oh, these are all over Michigan. I had no idea. These are in neighborhoods, but there's not full neighborhoods of mid-century modern homes, right? So where I am, they're all mid-century ranches, and then there'll be one weird one cool one that has a cool breeze block wall or whatever. And you're like, oh, I like that. And now I know, oh, those are mid-century modern. Anyway, you know how that natural progression of like, oh, now I understand. So it was very organic from little girl to teenager to a person. I went to school for design, fashion. So it was one of those things where you're just always recognizing it, but not even knowing why you are like, why does that look interesting? I like it, but what is that? So that was kind of how, and then our house came about, of course. Yeah. And then it was just like, oh, maybe I could do this for other people.
Right? I feel like it's like when you learn a new word and you hear it everywhere for the next week. Once you know how to recognize mid-century design and you put a name on it, it starts popping up all around you because it is everywhere in infill buildings and ring city neighborhoods. And I think I grew up in a 1970s neighborhood in a split level house, which I would now love to do a master plan for. I could do such great things with that house. It was, relatively modest, and it was done up in a very colonial style when we lived there. And then my mom tried to make it into a Tuscan villa because it was the 90s, and that did not work. But sorry, Mom, I know you're listening. But I didn't see those houses as in any way interesting or cool. They just seemed suburban, boring. But if you had interface with Palm Springs, even from an early age, they're the Jetsons' house. They are just undeniably cool, even if you don't know what they are, even if you can't categorize them. So, that's so fun. I have enjoyed watching you go to Palm Springs and your Instagram account over the last years. And there's just always so much to love there. It's really gorgeous. So your training is in design, but in fashion. So when you think about details, when you think about materials and how patterns and color and shape come together, it is kind of a universal language, but you started by making changes to your own home and then you wanted to sort of apply those to other people's houses.
Yeah.
What would you say? And I'm asking this question with an axe to grind, because I know you've been talking on your Instagram recently about how you're now thinking about your home a little differently than when you first started. By the way, same. What would you say you've sort of progressed through as you've gone further and further into the world of mid-century, as you've gotten obsessed with it?
Well, I think I know what happened. When we bought it in 2012, I didn't know about I will tell you, my grandma still lives in her 2-story colonial mid-century that has amazing bathrooms that I always thought was so beautiful. But I didn't think of putting 4x4 tiles in our bathroom. I will say that my house, unfortunately, was remodeled extensively in the 90s. So there wasn't much to keep. The brick wall behind me and then the fireplace, which is over on the side of me, those luckily had not been painted and no one took them down. They weren't hiding. It wasn't anything like that. But all the lights, all of the cabinets, the bathroom was gone. There was nothing here. There were no wood doors. There were just things had been painted numerous times. So it wasn't like I was coming into a time capsule and then ruining it. Thankfully, I did not do that.
Yeah.
However, I did not know how to restore it to its, proper glory, which I wish I would have. But, that was a learning process, and maybe for most of us.
And it was the moment. It's still hard to find the right advice. And I think one of the things you and I both do is just try to fill up the internet with good advice so that if someone's looking hard enough for it, they will find it. But particularly in that sort of early cottage paint it white moment, the subway tile, the just cover that brick with white. It'll be so fresh and new.
Oh, my father-in-law was like, "What are we going to do with this brick wall? It's so ugly." And I'm like, "That's like the only thing that's cool in the whole house right now. What would you do with it?" He's like, "I don't know what I would do with it, but I don't like it." I'm like, "That's fair. You don't have to like it." But so I made a few good choices. I'm sitting in my kitchen and I did orangey teak colored, birch veneer cabinets. Those are great. We're not changing those. But yeah, the subway tile really has to go. And it wasn't the original plan, but what I wanted to do in there was too wonky. The tile goes, "That's going to look terrible." So like in a game day decision, I was like, we'll just do subway tile. It's super cheap. I'll have it installed. It'll be white. We'll do gray or out. It's totally 2012. And of course, like a year later, I'm like, this was a terrible, expensive mistake. This was terrible. So I lived with it. I've added wallpaper to kind of make it feel exciting, but it still annoys me. So it's leaving in June.
Oh, hooray. That's so exciting. Yeah, I think nothing hurts more than the choices you make yourself that you later disagree with. Especially, and you can curate, fortunately or unfortunately, you see your bathroom tile every day. I made a choice when I moved into my house to paint the exterior dark gray, which I don't regret because I like it. I would do it olive green now, but I don't hate it. But I left the replacement windows that a previous owner had chosen white. And so it's white trim and dark gray. And it's just that thing. And since I have lived on this block, I've watched my neighbors move in and several of them have copied this pattern. And I'm like, you don't know how much I hate this detail of my own house. Please stop. I'm going to have to summon the energy to find the right primer to paint over that replacement window metal and get it to be dark gray as well, because I just can't let another person think this is a good idea. It hurts me so much.
No, we did the same thing. been taupe windows, and then last year I finally painted them brown, and they look like perfect. They look great.
It's so sharp. Yeah.
So great. I'm like, oh, which led to the interior changes this year. I'm like, I love the outside now. I love it so much, but the inside, and I'm like, it's time. It's time.
It's a cascade. Well, that's really fun that it's created a sort of a waterfall moment for you. And you've been working on more projects that you manage yourself as well. You've got a rental property. Is that different or connected to the office property?
So the office and the rental house are on the same property, and it's been fun, but very challenging with our township and all of the legal jargon as far as it's a house and it's a building. And it was a grocery store. It opened in 1951, and the house was built after that. So unfortunately, it's just they don't really want us to use it as an office. They really want us to just pretend it's a big giant garage. And so it's been back and forth, Bella. I should cry about how much time we've spent in trying to just figure it out. So now it feels like it's still in process. We're still going for it. It's right around the corner from our house. It's super close. So it's very convenient. And my spouse works there like every day, like working. So trying to get it so it's not falling down anymore and raining inside and all of the things. So yeah, it's really fun, but it's been almost 6 years of working on it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, these projects can really be a labor of love. And of course, well, I want us to talk later about mid-century sort of society and social development, and zoning comes into that. And the way that we still think about zoning in this country is really frustrating because it's so singular use and not at all the way it makes it practical sense to live our lives in an integrated, uncar necessary way. But it's fun that you've got these projects where you get to have autonomy over how the choices get made, which is great. But you also work with other people. So talk to me about how you went from, I've done a project for myself, I found a cool house, I've highlighted some great things about it, other people are asking questions about this. What was your first transition? Where did you jump in, and then how's it gone since then?
Sure. It was super specific. I had a woman in a neighboring town reach out, and she must have followed me online or something. I wasn't like advertising. I was doing this. She was like, "Hey, I have this cool house. I'd love to hire you to help me." And I'm like, "Oh no, you couldn't hire me. I had a different business. I was doing event planning." And so I'm like, "No, but I'll swing by. We could like talk about what I would do if it were my house." And I walked in the door and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I would do. I would do this. You have all these different trims. They're all different colors. Like, let's just unify everything. And I think I probably still have it on my computer somewhere, but I typed up like a 12 or 14 page, like list each room, what I would do, how I would do it. No subway tile for sure. All the things that I had learned in my own renovation.
Right.
This is probably within a year of moving into the house and really being like, oh, dang, I made some choices that were wrong. And I don't think anyone ever called me out on the internet of like, this was a terrible choice. I think most people are kind enough, like you'll eventually realize that was wrong. But I definitely was like, oh, this was a terrible choice. So I went into that, just kind of like a freebie project. Like, let me see. Then after that, I was like, yeah, I should have charged her some money. This took me hours.
Oh, yeah.
And not that I would send her like a scary bill or something, but I was like, I could totally charge for just advice,
Right.
And then that kind of an acquaintance of mine then had an inquiry, and she's like, Aletha could probably do this. So I did one, and then someone reached out about a kitchen, and it just kind of went from there. And I think that was 2015, 2016. I'd have to look, but I was like, oh, okay. So then I slowly closed my event business and then started just doing houses full time. And I'm sure you've had projects published before. And so then people are like, can we publish this? And I'm like, absolutely. That would be great.
Right.
And so that starts. And then I reached out to a few places with photos. And then, yeah, I just felt really legit after a certain point. You're like, okay, I guess I'm doing this now. And my parents are like, what are you doing here? Closing your other business? And I'm like, I mean, my brain can only focus on one business at a time. I'm not a multi-business person.
Oh, that makes so, I mean, yes, the business part of running a business is so much and so pulls you away from the fun thing you're trying to do. I can't imagine running the administration for two at the same time. That would be madness. And if your parents are anything like mine, they're from the baby boomer generation. They probably just don't see mid-century. I wonder, has this changed? Mine didn't, and now I've kind of incepted with the idea. But the you're going to focus on what kind of houses? You get that question?
Yeah, I think so. I think from lots of people, like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's a really narrow segment of homes, but this is what I do. People are like, oh, I do think it's gotten more popular, though. I remember speaking to a group of realtors back in, I think, 2016, just about how to classify homes as mid-century modern or mid-century modest or mid-century like colonial, because all of the different things, or Tuscan or whatever we're looking at. And they were like, huh, I don't know. I've never thought of it that way, because the houses aren't that old, so they don't seem that interesting. But someone always says it was Pam of Retro Renovation. I think she would always call it the recent past.
Right.
It's historical, but it's more recent. And I always thought that was a good way to say, like, we're not talking about Victorian era homes from 100 years ago, 150 years ago. We're talking about like people that were born in these, people that are still around, clearly, our parents were born in the mid-century.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's as we continue to go forward in time, the age accumulates. But I think that the requirement for historic designation is only 50 years. So we're well beyond that moment for mid-century. It's hard for me to see that things that were built in the 80s, in the 90s, and the 2000s, that they're going to have, I don't know. I don't want to be that person who's like, back in my day, but I don't know that they have the construction quality or the design consistency to have the same staying power. Certainly, if I think about sort of schools of architecture, postmodernism is an interesting concept, but it was built in materials that are already so in such poor condition that I just can't see that there's going to be anything there to preserve if anyone even wanted to. But the mid-century era, I mean, these houses were built right in a new way, and they have so much to love about them. And so you really get to focus. You, like me, have a business that is all you do is mid-century. Come to me if you want mid-century. If you don't want mid-century, enjoy your life and find somebody else to help you with that. So I'm really curious what your philosophy is as you work with people on, do you generally work on houses that have something to restore, or are you sort of recreating as you go along because it's had a bad remodel in the past? What tends to happen, and how do you approach it when you start a new project?
Most of my clients hire me to do a kitchen or bath or a combination, or we do one and then a couple years later we do the other. So I would say a majority of my clients have a remodeled kitchen or bathroom, and we are taking out something that was put in the 80s, 90s, early aughts, and we are trying to reimagine what a better working kitchen would be and what was here originally. I always talk about, this is what I would assume was here originally based on XYZ. We do not need to create a mid-century museum for you to live in. But what makes sense for your family now? If they're talking about like, oh, well, we're going to sell in 5 years. Well, what would make sense to a family that would fit this house? You know how families have changed so much. Back then, most kids shared a bedroom.
Yeah.
And now today, when we look at a 2-bedroom house, 3-bedroom, 3 or 4-bedroom, they're probably not going to have 6 kids in a 3-bedroom house.
Right. It's probably going to be a couple that work from home.
Right. So a kitchen doesn't have to seat, 5, 7 people for dinner. So it's just different. How that has changed too. So I do mostly kitchens and baths. And yeah, I would say a majority of the people have something we're taking out that is not original. I have taken out some original kitchens that have worked hard for 70 years. They've been repaired. They've been, and it always pains me a little bit because it feels very against what I feel about really. But I know that the person really, and what we're putting in is, it's going to last hopefully another 50 years. wood is different today than it is then what is then wood cabinets. Sometimes I get veneered, but sometimes I'm taking out solid wood and it feels really bad. But I understand. I can understand all the things. And I always say, this is your house, not mine. This is what I would do, but we will do what you want to do. You're paying, you live here. These are the things. So it's me just kind of guiding people on what I think was there and what I think would be the best way going forward. And then, in the end, of course, they pick the layout they want. I offer numerous layout options. I think we do the same thing.
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E, like which one looks good. I've had a few clients pick exactly the same layout they already have, which is always fascinating. I'm like, really? Okay. I mean, that's fine, but okay.
For some people, it's funny. My mom has recreated the same kitchen layout in every kitchen, and I designed my parents a home from scratch. And it's a different looking kitchen, but it's the same kitchen layout she always has, of the U shape with the butcher block in the middle, and it's just how she works. So yeah, I show people options. I try to limit it to 3. I give people too many options.
Yes.
They go into a conniption. But I think, yeah, ultimately you need to let people sit with something and decide what's going to work for their family. No matter how many questions you ask in advance, you can only sort of estimate what's going to actually land. And so letting them sort of lean into something that works is so important.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, I think from my perspective as an architect, and I know everybody that listens to the podcast has questions about what does it mean to work with an architect, to work with an interior designer. They are different processes. So where do you kind of start and finish with your hand-holding with the clients? You begin with a kitchen that needs work, and then where do you end?
So when a kitchen, they want to replace the whole thing, which is usually why they would hire me. I start with layout design. So we do 3 different layouts and, kind of go back and forth on what would work for them. And I do everything electronically. I think you probably do too. So I'm not drawing anything by hand, but we lay everything out. I would say that my drawings are not precise down to the millimeter or anything like that. It's basically like, this is the layout. And once we have that finished, we bring in my cabinet maker, and I have a few that I've worked with over the years, and then they do precise measurements. No one is making a cabinet based on my measurement. I took that day with a laser real quick. Like, no, not going to happen. So, but we know the basic layout, and then we kind of lay out exactly where the cabinets are. Yeah, we know where the sink is going to go, but where's the trash? We'll figure the trash layout when we get this on the floor. So, while my cabinet maker does all of his estimates as far as cost goes and, what the actual layout of each specific cabinet is going to be, then I start on the design. So color of the wood, backsplash options, the countertops, the pulls, the sink faucet, the actual sink. Some clients are pretty particular on appliances, but also I usually meet them at my appliance store and we pick everything out together. I prefer everything integrated and seamless with cabinets, but that's not everyone's price point and not everyone's preference. So we talk through all those details, and there's a ton of meetings just like, at the countertop place and, all the things that I do. And I don't know how involved you get with like those selections, or you're just like, quartz will be great. Whatever color you want to do is fine.
I don't. In my sort of boiled down version of, I used to work in high-end residential, and we would not necessarily meet on site with people about those, but we would do all of those selections. And to make a master plan affordable to people, what I do now is make a material palette recommendation and then leave product selections open to them in the process. I do, for some clients, go further and get more into the weeds after we've concluded our master plan package, but I work from a fixed fee model, so I have to kind of put a boundary on where that goes. And because we often work remotely these days in this post-pandemic era, I can't be on site with someone who's in California or Washington State sort of walking through appliance stores. But I love the concept of getting to pick all those details. So it's always the thing I'm most wistful about when I think about an interior design process, is getting to be in that moment of like, I recommend this specific thing, this product, this exact stain, that sort of thing, because those details make such a big difference to the ultimate outcome.
Yeah, and I have, a very basic formula. It's the same cabinet, just whatever color we're staining it. I love fire clay tile. I love that they have all the colors, and I love that they have the trim pieces. That's actually the most important part to me, especially with the bathroom.
Yeah.
And the size and the shape, and tile backsplashes in a kitchen were very rare. So that's always where I feel like we can do something a little more fun that definitely feels fresh and new and updated for a very mid-century, otherwise looking kitchen. So
Yeah.
I help with all of those design details. And I had a client probably a year ago just hire me for a backsplash. She could not come up with the backsplash she wanted. It was a mid-century colonial, so I probably wouldn't have taken her on as a full kitchen client anyway, but it was great. She kind of told me what she liked, and then she just couldn't find exactly what she wanted. So I don't do a lot of just hourly consulting. I do more like flat fee, and my kitchen is based on a flat fee as well. So there's an outline of what that is, and it works well. But some clients need you to hold their hand on everything, which is great. And some clients are, oh, we already have our appliances picked out. I'm like, okay, well, that saved me a trip to, the appliance store. So but all of those really pretty things, plus the layout. I know you also do that part. And it's not my favorite part because it's more fun for me to pick out all the selections. But what I realize is most people cannot lay out a new kitchen because they are looking at the kitchen that's there and that's all they can see.
Right. It's overwhelming to the average person. They can't see through a wall. They can't adjust what it would mean to change up the cabinet footprint. And that's such a loss to replace in place. Occasionally it's the right choice for someone, but if you're going to do all of the work, if you're taking everything out of a kitchen and starting from scratch and you put it back exactly how it was, it's such a missed opportunity. And I'm sure you see this all the time with those 90s kitchens, that they have all of the awkwardness of the original mid-century layout because someone just took out the original mid-century cabinets and plopped in new formaldehyde box cabinets with a wrong finish.
Yep.
So it's the worst of both worlds. It's inauthentic to the period, but it's still that awkward housewife only layout, which is so silly.
That was my first kitchen client. She actually called me down to her house to go over a dining room design. While I was there, she's like, oh, we're going to replace the kitchen. And then she busts out the plans. And I'm like, wait, you're taking out this whole kitchen and putting in the same kitchen? Wait a sec. There's an opportunity here to make this better. And we did. We did a really cool with a big island. And it was the same exact footprint. We didn't make anything bigger. We just opened up the U to an open galley is how I would describe it. So it was funny. And so she became my first kitchen client kind of by accident. And I felt a little bad to whoever had proposed the other option. I'm like, I mean, you can do whatever you want, but if this were my house, I'd at least look at a couple other layouts.
I've run into that before as well. And I never want to speak ill of another designer, but I do think that there are a lot of people out there who just haven't given any thought to the specific challenge of a mid-century house. And we have. So it's never inappropriate to give advice based on that, I think.
Yeah. And I don't think that person was a designer, so I didn't feel bad. I think it was just like a kitchen company, or even someone, a contractor who happens to sell and rep these cabinets. And so I don't know if it definitely wasn't another designer in that instance. But yeah.
And that is also so often the trouble, is that there isn't a designer. And that, again, it's such a wild missed opportunity because we have a fee. It's not nothing. But the idea of going to the entire expense of a remodel without having invested any thought whatsoever in design is such madness. It blows my mind every time. Every time I encounter it, which I constantly do, I can't even understand it. But yeah, so there's the layout, which is, as you say, such a huge opportunity. And then you get into the details. Do you help people pick things that aren't attached to the house, decorative objects? I know you do a lot of fun thrifting and finding art pieces for yourself. Do you do that for clients as well? Or is that something that's more passion project?
I do a lot of, like right now I'm working on a basement for a client, and they took out, a 1970s medieval themed basement. I'm not joking. There were knights in reliefs it was insane. I've had one other client with a kitchen that was medieval themed that we did a really great. Yeah, it must have been a thing. I haven't dove into the weeds of that, but it was very strange. So we gutted it. We took it all out, and we're doing like a fresh. It's going to be nice. It was so dark. It was it literally was like a medieval castle dungeon. That's what it felt like when you were in there. So It's all nice and bright now, but all of their things, they've been really awesome clients, as in they love all the vintage things I can find for them. So for them, they're about 40 minutes from my house. So I'm not like out and about, but I am looking on Marketplace and Craigslist and, secondhand options and sending photos from the thrift. Like, hey, I found this giant piece of art for $40 that would work. Or here's a really cool sculpture we could put on this wall. So I am so for the right client who wants to really dive into those, vintage yet cool, but they're not going to be perfect. All that vintage stuff like isn't perfect. So you have to be cool with like, well, it's missing a piece, but no one will notice but us because we've talked about it. So yeah, I definitely am finding those things when the client is up for that. I will say I definitely have clients who want nothing vintage. They just want new stuff that looks vintage, and that's fine. There's also the part of like, you have to be able to go pick up these vintage things. You have to drive 30 minutes or you have to be home to take a delivery. I mean, there's lots of, and I didn't really think about that because I work for myself. So if I want to run 30 minutes away to pick up a tiny teapot, I can do that at any time, basically, right? My clients are like, I can't just leave the house to go or my office to go do this. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. We're not all self-employed.
Absolutely.
So it has to be, yeah. So I have different clients that want to do different things. At the end, if I come in like style built-ins or something, I have a lot of things that I can pull from. And I will just, I will bill them for whatever they want. I'm not a vintage dealer, so I'm not like marking any of that up. I'm like, oh, it looks like I paid $1.50 for this like tchotchke. Do you want it? Like, I'll only charge you $1.50 because it's been sitting in my basement and it's really. And then they're like, $1.50, sure. I'm like, yeah, cool. But I don't keep a bunch of stuff on hand for clients specifically. I think that if I get my building up and running, that would be I would love to have clients like come in and shop it, like whatever.
Oh yeah.
What catches your eye and we'll just pull it. But I don't know if I'll ever get to that point where I just have so much stuff because stuff is overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
I just don't like it all. Yeah. So we'll see.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah. And getting into that level of detail, I think it was from you I learned the term drape training.
Oh yeah. I just did that.
And it's so interesting. I'm like, absolutely. The minute I read the words, I was like, oh, of course. Yes. But then of course, as an architect, I only have blinds in my house because minimalism. Yeah. But I love the concept. I still think back to my grandparents lived in a perfect time capsule, 1953. It wasn't fancy, but it was like a slightly elevated classic Midwestern ranch. In Racine, Wisconsin. And it had it really was unchanged since probably 1960 something. All of the drapes, all of the furniture, every piece of art. And I have their bedroom set, which I asked for from the family when we were breaking up their household, but I wasn't obsessed with mid-century then. And now I'm like, I want to go back in time and take every single object out of their house, including their gorgeous, slightly tattered, but still so charming pinch plate curtains that went across the whole living room window. Oh, love it.
I think you can see the ones back here in mine. And I only have a panel here because I didn't have enough of that fabric to do the whole, this is like 12 feet of window behind me.
You just leave it open.
But and then I have a sheer behind it. So at night we pull the sheer, it's kind of hiding behind it. But I did just find secondhand drapes for the new color scheme out here. And they're from like JCPenney, but they're a faux, raw silk. So they match the fireplace weirdly, like exactly. And I'm like, for $80, do you know how much 12 feet of pinch pleat drapes would be? Thousands. And I would gladly pay it if I didn't find secondhand ones because they make the room. Right. They are, I love doing drapes for people.
It's the necessary for if you want your true vintage mid-century time capsule house, then it's the detail that absolutely, I agree, it makes or breaks it. That's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, this might be a good place to transition as I talk about things that I learned from you and your Instagram account, because I think actually one of the first conversations we ever had in DMs was about terminology, and it was about the color Cherokee red and Frank Lloyd Wright, and how probably we shouldn't be taking his word for it, that it was okay to adopt that term and just run with it. I don't recall whether you suggested Usonian Red as a good alternative, but we were having a conversation about how that maybe that wasn't such a good idea. And I know I also picked up from you the concept of it's kind of creepy to call it a master bedroom, and maybe we should think about it as an owner's suite instead, or a primary suite, or something of that kind, which I now have like adapted all of my documentation language to match that. But I know you have really made a point to have your beliefs and your political activism have a presence in your online footprint. I so admire that. So I know you'd mentioned you have thoughts about mid-century history and social times and how we deal with that now.
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in political of mid-century anything, but I definitely have not enjoyed, but appreciated learning more. And I think the redlining was the biggest eye opener to me of how people, I'm getting teary just talking about it. How crazy it is that people were not allowed to buy a house because they were not white.
Yeah.
That still, it was not that long ago, and it blows my mind. I think of specifically of Black servicemen coming back from war and not being able to buy a house.
I know.
Because they are Black or Asian or Native American. It is insane to me that was like in my grandma's lifetime, in my mother's lifetime. It's wild to think about, and we were just fine with it. That part, I'm like, what? And it just took a lot, and we are not out of those weeds yet. Maybe the redlining.
No, we're not. But we don't talk about it quite that way anymore. I think, well, and in some ways we don't have to, because we built the homeownership structure of this country around who could and who could not get into affordable homes and where those homes added value. And now it's just, it just happens that only white people live in this neighborhood, but it's not by accident.
Not by accident.
And knowing that is really important to understanding why things are the way they are in our history and in our current society.
And when we were looking for homes in 2012, we wanted to be in a quote unquote good school district. And what does that mean? What is a good school district?
Yeah.
Saying it out loud is not good. It is mostly white school district, right? When you say it's good, and that doesn't sound good.
And it's so easy for people to just take it from a realtor who can, even with the best intention in the world, just casually rattle off, oh yeah, this is a good school district here. Look in this neighborhood. Whether they're thinking about it today, I don't even know. But yeah, my parents chose a house in a northern suburban Chicago school district because the realtor told them it was a good district. And yeah, we had a lot of tracked classes and opportunities to have special sort of after school activities and things like that. But then when we moved to Madison, when my sister was still in high school and she ended up in an urban school that had a lot more demographic difference within it, she was at first really shocked, and then later came to become convinced that she was getting such a better education because she was actually experiencing what it was like to be in the real world. And she still got to take great classes and have excellent teachers. And she also got into tutoring and just felt a little bit less like she was in a bubble where she deserved everything because she was a special snowflake, So yeah, I think it's so easy to take simple concepts like I want my kids in a good school district and use that to perpetuate
Totally. Yeah.
broken, bad systems that are so frustrating when we look back at the history of them.
Yeah. And again, I'm not an expert, but I think it is interesting just to learn it and be like, whoa, this is why my neighborhood is all white, because no other families can buy here. And that's really what it comes down to. And then you see what your family is, right? Like on my little street here, I'm the only person that didn't grow up in this town and go to high school here. Every other neighbor, there's probably 20 neighbors. They all went to school here. They were raised here. They raised their family here. Maybe not in the same exact house, but in this, this small little school district. And so it's like, wait, you've never left Grand Haven ever? Like that's crazy to me.
But a lot of people don't. And then those legacies persist. Yeah. Well, I think it's part of loving mid-century is learning what's good about it, what's bad about it. In building materials, there's all this the plywood is of a quality that hardwood isn't today. And also there's asbestos mastic under all the tile. And it was such a forward-looking, sort of optimistic era of positive future goals, sort of like the Jetsons, and we were all going to live in flying cars and it was going to be perfect. And it was deeply segregated, and we were trying to push women back into houses and out of the workplace after World War II, and all of these things kind of lock in together. So it's important to be aware of it, I think, when you love this era. And to talk about it. So I think it's fun to talk about it on the podcast. I've had some fun digging into the history of, I've had some educational times digging into the history of redlining and talking about that specifically, and thinking about how our current values are or are not reflected in our houses and our choices. And for us to think about, when we live and love mid-century homes, single-family homes, ranch-style houses, that doesn't mean we can't still support more density in our communities and more new construction, and thinking about how people can be housed appropriately, as we are in another housing crisis, just like they were in the 50s and 60s when they built all these single family homes. But yeah, I think all the things we can do to just sort of check ourselves and make sure we're still living the way that we want to in these houses that are so beautiful is a good idea.
There's one area of where I work a lot. It's a small community, and there are a lot of mid-century homes there. It's a very wealthy neighborhood. The schools are top schools, and they are very, close together. So denser homes. And that is just, I don't know the history of like that area, but I think when I'm there, I always think of, oh, wow, all of these neighbors seem to be very forward thinking and building a very modern home at the time. Maybe this area has always been more progressive and conservative. And I don't know, because I was not born. I didn't live in that part of town, even as a child myself. And so, but it is interesting just to think of the politics of each little area. I grew up in a rural, area, way out in the country. And I have a friend whose parents grew up in the same town. And she just talks about, oh, my parents were so progressive. I have no idea why they ended up there. It was such a strange, backwards little town. I'm like, oh, it's so fun. Like, I'm glad they were there and they were loud and proud. It wasn't like they were keeping their feelings hidden. So, very interesting to just digest all those facts that I learned over the years about politics in different little towns. Why is this here? How did this happen? Why, there's lots of questions. So,
the why of things is really where it's at, and how you learn to sort of connect the threads and figure out how one structural system is connected to a design result, or how zoning law influenced the way that houses are spaced, or, all these different pieces that come together. And it's part of spending a decade being obsessed with this moment in time.
Yeah, so true.
Oh, that's really fun. So, okay, well, we have a limit, and we don't really have a limit on how long a podcast can be, but we have a general length of podcast we're probably pushing at this point. But I wanted to ask you two specific questions, which I usually have in each episode of my podcast. And the first one is a recommended mid-century resource, and that might be a design trick or a book or a website, a particular product. And then the other is a favorite mid-century design feature. So I'm completely putting you on the spot here. I apologize.
Yeah, you are. That's okay. If I were just getting started with mid-century, I would dive into Pam Retro Renovation, her website. I think she has such a catalog of information on bathrooms, on all the expensive parts of anyone's home, bathrooms, kitchens. She's got lists. I mean, I don't think she doesn't update it anymore. Archive is.
But the archive, yeah, I totally agree.
And she's got links to products. And even if those links are defunct, you could still probably Google what she had linked to before and probably find whatever it was. I know there was I've used it before, a really a really simple bathroom vanity light. I hate what is on the market today. I hate seeing a bulb. I hate all these clear things. Oh, they're terrible. I hate them. But there is one very simple, just bar light. It's, I think Satco makes it. It's just a simple glass. It's $30 or $40.
Amazing.
And it's the perfect light for every mid-century. Now, some people don't want to only spend $40. Rejuvenation used to make a really great one, but they have discontinued that, unfortunately. But they're, so I know that. I know I found it on her site and I was like, this is perfect. At the time, it was probably $20. It's probably 40 now, but that is a plethora of information. It talks about colorful tile and, it just, old appliances. I always reference her website. Always.
Yeah, me too.
I can usually, like, if someone asks me a question, I can usually quickly Google on her website what I'm looking for because I know I've read the article, grab the link for the person and be like, here's your answer. Like, this is not my answer. This is Pam's answer. Or she had Kate work for her for a while. It might be Kate's answer too. So anyway.
Right. No, that's such an amazing resource. And over time, so many people have responded to it that she really was able to crowdsource even more detail and background and accuracy. So yeah, her retro renovation website, I'll put a link to it in the show notes for the podcast episode. You're absolutely right. And I don't think I've talked about that recently. So that is a perfect jumping off point. Or frankly, it's a great deep dive for someone who wants to consider themselves a mid-century expert. It's a good spot.
Yeah, for sure. When I started my own house renovation, I definitely started updating a blog with just what I was doing. I haven't kept it up. Writing a blog is like a full-time job. Like,
oh my God, yeah.
I used to do that like in 2007, 2008. I started my first business and I was blogging because there wasn't really social media so you're just blogging and linking and like sharing things. And I had a lot of readers, but man, after social media came in and you could just kind of mini blog, right? It kind of eliminated that. So I don't write every day anymore. But anyway, yeah. So my favorite design feature, I'll get back to your second question, I promise. And it's hard to pick just one. I would say exterior, definitely a breeze block wall. Definitely, I should have my little thing.
I was going to say, I had that in my notes. You put together the hashtag I break for breeze block, which I should have a bumper sticker on my car saying that for safety because I do. And I'm dangerous.
Well, I have a bumper sticker. I should send you one because I still have a box. I made those. It just came up in my thing 10 years ago. I made a bumper sticker that says I break for breeze block. I had sent them out to people who wanted them for, I don't know, a while. And then I was like, I hate going to the post office. It's so stupid. I don't like shipping things. So what am I doing? Anyway, I do have that cute thing. I seriously have a stack of them. I need to find someone that can just like do the mailing portion for me. Anyway, so that would be my exterior feature for sure. Interior, ooh, I love a good room divider built-in planter, right?
Oh yeah.
Like, walk in the front door. I had one client once that had this it wasn't a planter, it was just this room divider, and then it was a bookcase on both sides. And it was a pretty simple house, but this had remained there and it was just such an eye-catching feature that an interior planter. I just have a little baby one on the side of my fireplace over there, but it's still like so fun that I'm glad it stayed. No one ever like took it out.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah. I'm settled on that answers. So.
I love those. I couldn't agree more. I think those are great choices. And yeah, particularly with your Palm Springs connection, breeze block it's the thing. And it's harder to find in the Midwest, but it does exist. So have you ever specified it? Have you ever helped someone install it? Or do you only love it in the wild?
So Pam from Retro Renovation she has a page there where she's linked to all the ones where you could buy them in each state, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And I called to get some for myself one. And I called the one in Grand Rapids, which is closest to me. And they were like, we just pulverized those a couple of weeks ago because they've been sitting in our yard for years and no one ordered them. So we literally ground them down to just concrete dust. And I was like, what?
That is so sad.
Okay. So I actually did, Greg and I, my spouse, we went down an hour south of here and rescued some once, but they were all full of mortar and it would have been a giant, and they sat in my backyard for years. And then I gave them away to someone else, but I did, buy some new ones from a woman in here in town that she had gotten some leftovers from someone else's project. So they moved around. I have a stack of them that we're going to install over at our rental. But I have never done it for a client. I've had clients with breeze block walls that we've, used and loved and made look better. but I've never installed them for a client. But I have installed a couple of planters. So that's easier to do. It's easier to find, easier to find Roman brick that that matches their fireplace and house. And so I have done that a few times. And I have a great mason that will, he's like, I know what you want. I take those out all the time. I'm like, I know that should be illegal, but I hear you. So.
Oh my gosh. If it could be, or if there could just be like a moment where you just sit someone down and say like, this is what this is. And this is how hard it is to put it back. And are you sure? But people's homes are their homes. And I know you've talked about it. We've talked about it today. The choice someone makes for their own house has to be personal, even if we as the designer don't love it. But we can make recommendations and show cool examples. And sometimes that's what it takes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all personal, but it also, I am like, ooh, the same thing you just said. Like, this is how much it would, I think that's the hard part. You know how much it would cost to replace an all tile bathroom in the way.
And maybe that's maybe that's an argument that we should be making more often, is that price point.
Yeah. 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 Like, I have people who definitely do not want a yellow bathroom or whatever. And I'm like, this tile is in excellent shape. You do not need to take this out. Like, I hate yellow. I'm like, I get it. Like, maybe we could put together a different color though, to make it feel not as annoying to you.
Right. And often there is something you can do, a complementary color or tone it down or bring in some accent piece that makes it a little less. Yeah. If you've got an original color block bathroom that is functional, keep it. It's so hard to make them new. I know, because I've had clients who've done it. But yes. Oh, well, I think the more we can spend time talking to people about what's great about mid-century homes and just filling up little corners of the internet with better advice so that people who are just starting out like we once were don't make the same mistakes that we did.
It honestly is why I've kept talking. So I have a Facebook page called Mid Mod Mish. And I used to, like 10 years ago or 12 years ago, I was updating my own house progress. And then I decided to start sharing houses for sale. And the point with that was I wanted to call out all the features that should be saved. Like, hey, this has great XYZ. And it's the only thing I could figure out to think of to just like put it out there.
Yeah.
These things are worth saving. And I know whoever buys it probably isn't going to see my post and care about the purple bathroom or whatever. But I at least was trying to do a little part to just be like, look at the built-ins, look at this. Wow, they're unpainted. Like, nicest way possible, just trying to call out those features. So maybe it would get to the right person to not paint everything white, to not pull out the room divider, to not, one thing I didn't know when I bought my house is that I had limestone windowsills, not cement. I didn't know that those were not concrete, right? Like, so those kinds of things. I talked to my concrete man. Could you fix this? He's like, that's not concrete, it's limestone. I'm like, what is this limestone you speak of? Oh, you can just still buy it. And so anyway, all those things that you learn over time, just asking are, So just trying to do what you can to educate, but not feel like, don't do this, young man, so that feels like a balance, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, at this point, I feel pretty confident making statements to an Instagram reel, like never do this, because I'm assuming that anyone who really disagrees isn't paying attention to what I have to say anyway. But I think the more that we can just show people that there's an option to preserve, the more people will feel comfortable doing that. And the better off all these great mid-century homes are. And there are a lot of them. But then, of course, the more that they get remodeled, the fewer original details that there are. So gotta call them out while they're here. Oh my gosh. Well, this has been such a pleasure to chat with you. And we're just going to have to do it again because we haven't possibly plumbed the depths. But I just want to thank you again for joining me today. This has been such a delight and a really long time coming. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's good to see you, finally meet you. And yeah, this was great. We could totally go down rabbit holes of many, many things.
Thanks for listening to the Mid-Mod Remodel podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend who has a mid-century home, or drop a quick review in your podcast platform of choice to help us find new listeners and more mid-century homeowners. Remember, if you want help planning the best possible remodel for your mid-century home, I'm here to help. And there are 3 easy ways to work directly with me on a great design for your home. You can schedule a consult with me anytime you need one. In a 30-minute Zoom, we can dig deeply into the 1 or 2 issues that have you tied in a knot, or do a quick, comprehensive mid-century house audit. Take me on a tour and ask me your top questions about every space in the house. We'll sort out your next best step. If you're looking for ongoing support to DIY a great plan for your mid-mod remodel, you want to check out the Ready to Remodel program. I'll share the step-by-step mid-century master plan process with lessons, guides, design ideas, and workbooks for every planning stage. And I'll invite you to my monthly Architect Office Hours call so you can get your questions answered as they come up throughout the process. Learn all about setting up your own master plan in my free class, Planning a Mid-Century Remodel to Fit Your Life and Budget. Or if you'd rather have me assess your life and your house, prepare layout options, sketch floor plans and example views for inside and outside spaces, and present you with an array of great possibilities to pick and choose from to develop a perfect, timeless, tailored remodel, well then you're looking for our mid-century master plan package. Learn more about all these ways to work with us at midmod-midwest.com. Catch you next week, Mid-Mod Remodeler.